So today we're going to be tier listing all of the Hades items, explaining kind of what they do, when to use them, when I think the best time to use them is, and I'm going to be ranking them across their utility across all weapons, not just one weapon, and all aspects, just how often I find myself using them. So without further ado, let's get right into the tier list. Pom Blossom is going to upgrade your boons. It'll just choose a random boon after 4 floors, it'll upgrade it, and it'll get better. It's pretty good. A lot of people really like it. Honestly though, I put it in B tier for Pom Blossom. Not even that high B tier. Actually, yeah, pretty high B tier. I guess it's close to A. A lot of times it's A. I find Pom Blossom kind of awkward to use. So the biggest thing you're going to find on this tier list is opportunity cost. These god relics, some of these aren't as good because their gods just aren't as good, have such a huge opportunity cost when you do not use them. Because these are going to actively progress your build. You can force certain gods to appear. You can force certain gods into your run with them. If you don't choose these, you have to stick with the 4 gods the game chooses for you. And you could end up with 4 gods such as Ares, Dionysus, Zeus, and all 3 of these gods aren't percent damage scaling. And since they aren't percent damage scaling, they suck on half of the weapons. Alternatively, you could get stuck with Artemis, Poseidon, Aphrodite, and Athena. All of those are percent damage scaling, which is great if you have a big attack. If you're using the railgun, kiss your run goodbye. So it's instrumental that you use some of these god boon ones. I get it. If you want to have a nice random run, sometimes you don't want to. We aren't talking about for funsies, but the opportunity cost of picking almost any of the non-god relics is absolutely massive. Pom Blossom wants to shine early on, wants to upgrade your good boon early on, but it doesn't do anything to get you that good boon. There's an equal chance it's going to be upgrading something like kind of shit. Now, usually it won't. Usually I've had good luck with it, but I also feel like Pom upgrades aren't that crazy. They're crazy up to about Pom upgrade 3, but the damage increase from Pom upgrade 3 to 4 is not that crazy. So in the first zone, it's pretty good. You get some, if you get lucky, you're going to get a really good boon and you're going to get some upgrades on that boon. The second area, by now you have quite a few boons. You probably have around 5 to even 9 boons, depending on your luck and depending on your choices. And well, 9 boons, there's a good chance it'll start randomly selecting boons that you don't really want. And yeah, you can remove those boons or try to remove those, but that means if you don't take those boons, you're going to probably see them again later in your run. So personally, I like to take boons, even if I don't care for them that much, just to know, hey, at least it's not in my run and I can get something good from this god by exhausting the rest of their pool. So Pom Blossom is going to oftentimes in Asphodel, the second zone, just be dead hitting a lot of things, or your main boons will be so upgraded that level 5 and level 6 does not matter. It is legitimately like a 5% damage boost on even the best, like heroic quality Aphrodite. It's going to be like a 5% damage boost. Or if you're going for like a defensive thing, it'll be like a 0.5% damage boost. 0.5% damage reduction. Now I will say, in Styx, each of those individual chambers do count for Pom Blossom, which is very good. You're going to be going through probably 20, 30 of those. You're going to get like 10 level upgrades, but by the final zone of Styx, you have like 20 boons. It helps you snowball early if you're lucky with boons, but it doesn't add any new boons or combos to your game, and the damage scaling actually isn't crazy. You're going to be getting 4%. So I actually don't like it very much, but I will say, if you don't want to go for the god relics because they're too good and they make your game they make it your game specific. Obviously, if you play with the Zeus one, you're going to get Zeus boon first, so it's very likely you'll be playing with Zeus attack pretty much every single time you use the railgun thing. So if you don't want your run to be predetermined in that way, I can understand why you would want to go with like something that isn't one of these god relics, in which case Pom Blossom is going to be your one. Pom Blossom is best used in the start, honestly. You're probably going to want to use Pom Blossom in the start and just stick with it. It's good if you don't really want to think too much about relics. You can turn it on and kind of brain dead run, and it's still a pretty good option. So Artemis is an easy S tier. Artemis is like probably beyond S tier. The only SS tier is going to be Artemis boon, and the reason for that is for 2 things. 1, Artemis boons just aren't too awful for percent damage scaling. The percent damage is low, but it gives you critical hit effects, and critical hit effects are nasty. and you can usually stack them up pretty well. So it's usually going to be either Aphrodite or Artemis you want for percent damage scaling. So you've already got Artemis as a main DPS dealer. It's going to be one you're picking at the start of runs fairly often. But when you aren't picking it at the start of runs, Artemis has the best duo boons in the game. Going for a cast build, 1, you want exit wounds. 2, you're going to want Mirage Shot. So you want Artemis for 2 boons right there. Oh, and you would also want her for fucking... Okay, yeah, Artemis is crazy. So if you're going for a cast build, you're going to want Artemis for exit wounds. You're going to want Artemis for Mirage Shot. You're going to want Artemis for, if you're going for Demeter, the fucking ice tracky one. Don't know its name. You're going to want it for Hunting Blades if you're going for an Ares cast. Like, you want Artemis. Not to mention, her cast isn't bad on its own. If you're playing with the bow or a dash weapon similarly, her dash is solid. Like, Artemis is fucking solid. She's solid on offense. Like, seeing her dash or seeing her attack early on, very easy stage 1 pick. And if you don't pick her stage 1, you will very likely be picking her later on, because her boons are the best duo boons in the game. 100%. She's got overall the best duo boons. It's not just for cast builds. There's plenty of ones that work great without cast builds. For example, critical hits doing 150% more damage to weak foes. Awesome duo boon. You're gonna want Artemis for that. And that's one of the reasons Artemis works so well on your attack. But yeah, Artemis is good shit. She is SS tier because you can use her at any time. The only time I maybe wouldn't recommend is Styx. By then, you're kind of too late to build something up. Artemis should hopefully already be in your pool. Ideally, you're going to want to use Artemis on the first or second zone because she pairs so well into everything. You want to use her in the first zone if you are a percent damage dealer. That it means you have a big attack, aspect of Rama's attack, or Arthur's attack. Those are slow attacks, but do a lot of damage. That means you want those percents. So you'll want Artemis in the first zone if you're going for that. If you aren't going for that, or if you want Arthur with the attack of Aphrodite for that sweet, sweet week, then you'll probably want Artemis as your second zone. And so then you can introduce her to your pool, start getting more chances for some duo boons. You want Artemis fairly early on, but really selecting her at any time is not a bad option. Next we got Poseidon. Poseidon's going to be a low S tier, maybe A tier for me. So Poseidon is sick. You don't often seek him out too much because he is a percent damage dealer. He's going to give you percents, but he's not quite as valuable as Aphrodite's weak effects, nor is he as valuable as the sheer damage of critical hits plus all of the duo boons that Artemis holds. Poseidon has a lot of kind of mid duo boons. I'm not going to lie. So you don't usually pick him up for that. You pick him up for 2 situations. You have Zeus, and you want to combine like a lot of Zeus's attributes with your Poseidon attributes. That is a crazy combo because you can get what you can do is you can make your knockaway effects deal lightning. Poseidon also just has some good side damage potential, like in his dash it's very good. Rupture is awesome. More damage against bosses is pretty good, not as good as Rupture. Rupture is your main one. I still don't think he's as good as like Aphrodite or Artemis, but he's fairly close, and he does also have some cast potential. He has quite a bit of cast potential. His cast is one of the better ones in the game, and it has a lot of synergy with Zeus, and it has a lot of synergy with Artemis for Mirage Shot. But Poseidon, I'm taking probably 25% of runs, which is still fairly good. Aphrodite, I'm going to put 1 ahead of Poseidon. I use her quite a bit more often. I use her if I don't want to go Artemis, or if I want Artemis not on my main attack. She is probably one of the best, if not the best, damage scaler in the game, like for big attacks. So aspect of Rama attack, Arthur attack, again, Aphrodite is going to increase her damage by almost double. Plus, she's also going to give the enemies weak, which means they're going to be doing almost no damage against you. It's great. A lot of her side boons that like aren't in the main line aren't too bad. Her dash is also not too bad. Her cast isn't great. Probably don't want to use that unless you're going for aspect of Hera bow. Otherwise, her cast is a bit too close range to be good, even for the high damage. The dash is good because it applies weak. Damage isn't anything special, but applying weak is important. And then her side effects give you a lot of survivability and some extra damage, because it can make you do 20% more damage to weak foes. It can make weak foes deal 30% less damage instead of just 10%. Her call is very good. Her call can be used to kind of stun lock some guys. And her duo boons also aren't the worst. They aren't the best. She has a good duo boons with Artemis, a good duo boon with Zeus in some cases. Her duo boon with Poseidon is kind of alright, but it's not something you're ever going to go for that much. She's got some very good synergy with Ares too. I'm not going to argue that she has the best duo boons, but I feel like I utilize her duo boons a bit more than Poseidon. She has some good defensive things as well. Resist nearby foes' attacks. Most weapons require you to be nearby foes. Most enemies hit you from close range. Hades' big sweeping attacks, usually close range. So a good 15 to 20% damage reduction from that is good. All of her boons are pretty much good. There's none that are like, oh, these are missing so hard or anything like that. They're all very good boons. So Aphrodite gets a high up there. Athena's not that crazy. Honestly, I put Athena here. Athena is probably the worst god you can choose other than Demeter, and even then it's debatable. Now, maybe I'm just biased against Athena. First, let me talk about her fucking side boons. Her side boons are a lot of shit. So one, the ones that replenish Death Defiances are very good late game. If you find them early game, they're usually dead draws because the most important part isn't the extra 2 seconds on Death Defiance. You don't need 2 seconds of invulnerability on your Death Defiance. You want to regain a Death Defiance. So early game, a lot of dead draws. Okay, well, 2 dead draws. And then like the trap one, it's kind of mid. It helps you on the Hades fight. It's a lot of trap damage reduction, but it's kind of mid. It's nothing too special. Her attack and special are % damage scaling, but they deflect attacks, and it's much better to go for Artemis, who's going to give you more damage, or Aphrodite, who is going to give you weakening foes. Even Poseidon has like Rupture or something for more damage than Athena. Athena's effects just don't do that much damage, and deflect isn't that crazy. Now, Athena has very good dash, and Athena has a pretty good cast. Usually, though, nothing really relies on Athena's cast specifically. Well, nothing does rely on Athena's cast specifically, except like a Zeus duo boon, which isn't that crazy, but it's fine, it's good. Not something you'd build around, though, usually, unless you had like Mirage Shot and everything was falling into place. But like Ares or Demeter or Artemis, you're going to them to upgrade or get yourself a cast that goes really well. Athena, you're not really going to go for her like that. You might. The only time you're going to pick her is I've picked her early game if I want like a good cast. Late game, I don't usually bother. Late game, sometimes I'll be like, man, I really wish I had Athena in my pool so I could be getting some like Death Defiances back, but not enough to where I'm willing to like get rid of what could be Lucky Tooth, which is a guaranteed Death Defiance, or the Acorn, which is a guaranteed few free hits. So Athena is not actually going to do much for you, in my opinion. You really just want her for her dash and her cast, and then her side boons are okay, I guess. Most of them kind of suck. All the ones that have to do with deflect and exposed aren't that crazy. They really just aren't that crazy. They can be alright. Additionally, her duo boons are kind of mid. Like, if you pair her with Aphrodite, sure, your cast now does backstab damage. That's not usually that crazy. You don't want to be building to that unless you've already got Mirage Shot and your boon has got all the buffs under the sun. Then it's like, maybe. Sure. Athena doesn't have that crazy of boons. You aren't going to pick her early because you really would rather have Aphrodite or you would have Artemis, so she's slightly outclassed there. Now, if you were to just randomly find her with an epic attack, you'd probably take it. But you'd rather have the Aphrodite attack, so you're always going to be picking Aphrodite's Keepsake, not Athena's Keepsake. Dionysus, another S tier, probably about tied with Poseidon. Probably just about tied with Poseidon. So Dionysus is our first non-% damage scaler, and he's good for if you have a lot of attacks, or a lot of very fast, small attacks. So you can apply a lot of his poison stacks, and don't underestimate this guy's poison stacks, because they are absolutely insane. Like, his call is one of the best in the game. His cast is also pretty good, though. His call is, like, crazy damage. For example, if you just pick him up kind of casually on the sword, just get, like, an epic boon on your sword, you're going to be doing 50 damage every second just from the poison ticks. It's really good. And when you start, like, actually speccing into it, you're going to be doing hundreds of damage every second without having to be particularly near your foe, which is pretty good. You can hit the foe a bunch, and then when Hades disappears or you need to back off, or the foot skeleton dude in Asphodel, you know who I'm talking about, goes back up into the sky. Great. 100 damage, 100 damage, 100 damage. Constantly going to be doing that damage. So Dionysus is up there. He's also just got some good side boons. His side boons are going to make your fountains restore more health and give like damage buffs. Slow effects when you have Hangover. Hangover just has some good side buffs as well, just like Aphrodite's weak buff. He's got a lot of very defensive options, but he's also not too bad with like his Hangover options. And his duo boons are pretty solid. His Ares duo boon makes Hangover effects apply faster, which is just a straight DPS upgrade. Aphrodite weak effect means whenever weak foes get hit by Dionysus' boon, while Dionysus' Hangover, you can apply more stacks of Hangover. It's overall pretty good. Additionally, if you like pick him early on because you have a weapon that has like a lot of fast attacks, his cast is a great cop-out option if it ends up being epic and you can't get his attack for whatever reason, or his attack is just kind of like a very bad rarity. His cast is pretty good and can still carry you through Act 1. So Dionysus is usually a guy you pick up early, and when you specialize around his Hangover, or you pick him up early, and like his Hangover is pretty good and gets you through the first act, or his cast gets you through the first act. And so Dionysus is good. He's going to be your counterpart to either Zeus or Ares for lots of multi-hits. Speaking of Zeus, I want to put Zeus probably just above Dionysus. Personally, I kind of like Dionysus a little more, just because I'm a huge fan of DOTs, but I can't underestimate, or I can't discredit Zeus. Zeus does additional damage for every hit you do. So if you're shooting in a lot of bullets via the railgun, you have aspect of like Chiron with its special flourish thing, or whatever, where you just have a lot of fast attacks. Zeus is going to do additional flat damage. So 20 damage per shot. Well, if you're shooting a bunch of 10 damage bullets, 20 damage sounds like a lot. And it is a lot. Additionally, this just scales really well with like, is it Jolted? Jolted is what it's called. I was going to say Zolted. No, Jolted, it scales really well with that. It's got some good duo boons with, as I've said, Poseidon, not a bad one with Aphrodite. Really good one with Artemis, even if you aren't going for a cast build. That extra damage is just insane. Like, his duo boons are just solid. His cast is fairly solid. It's not my favorite. It's a solid cop-out option, though, if you want some easy clears early on. I still don't go for him like a ton for the duo boons or the side boons. His side boons are mostly just going to keep buffing and stacking on top of themselves, and he can easily carry a run. So he's probably going to be a more damage-oriented Dionysus, but Dionysus is a little more safe for if you, for some reason, aren't finding a bunch of Zeus. Because like sometimes you'll have a run where you equip the trinket, you find Zeus as your first guy, awesome, and then Zeus doesn't show up until River Styx, and that's just not going to cut it. Whereas Dionysus, honestly, you can just keep palming his Hangover effects up, and they will last you for much longer than Zeus will. But Zeus has more synergy with himself, with Jolted, Double Strike, more AoE Strike. That one's not really important. Lightning effects, creating more lightning effects. And his duo boons are a little bit better. So Zeus is going to go higher just because he has more damage potential. As long as you aren't unlucky, then it should be fine. Ares. I think Ares goes in A tier for me, right? Like, it's close to S tier. I don't use him quite as much as Poseidon, I want to say. It's almost equal. If Poseidon is just on the edge of being A tier, I'm doing this, and here's why. Artemis, Aphrodite, Zeus, and Dionysus pretty much represent your main damage boons. You will be picking them at the beginning of your run. In Artemis's case, you will pick her either at the beginning of your run or sometime later in your run. You're pretty much always picking her. In these guys' cases, you won't always pick them later in your run. Sometimes you will. Most times you will pick them in the first Tartarus of your run because they are going to be your damage dealers. Either Artemis or Aphrodite on the big heavy attacks, or Zeus or Dionysus on these smaller attacks. And so those are your damage dealers, whereas it's very rare you're going to say, all right, I want a Poseidon damage dealer. It's not so rare, I guess. I've done it enough, but never as much as these guys. He's usually like for cast builds, or if a weapon just really likes that extra knockback, then there are cases where I start with him, but he's usually just, I want to pick him up later for whatever reason. And Ares, I feel like, is the same way. It's not very often where I'm like, man, I want Ares Act 1, Tartarus 1. Now, it's kind of a toss-up which of these I'd say Ares is probably a little bit better than Poseidon. I know it's kind of weird, champ, but my reasoning is Ares has better side boons. Poseidon's side boons all buff themselves up in a very similar way of Zeus, and in a very good way, mind you. But Ares buffs you just generally. Sometimes, if my build is going well, I've gotten pretty much everything I want, I'll probably snatch, like, Ares. Because usually I'm like, oh, I've got everyone I want, and I look to 3 people usually. Dionysus for some of his defensive boons, healing mostly. Athena for her defensive boons, mostly that 10% damage reduction, or some extra death defiances I can try to snag later in the run. Or Ares for more damage, because his death defiance 30% damage is huge. If you die twice during the Hades fight, 60% more damage all the rest of the fight. Or the 15% universal damage on your cast, special, and attack. That one's pretty good. He's got a lot of effects that aren't too bad. And so usually if I'm looking for a little bit more offense to throw onto myself, I'm probably going to end up taking Ares. Plus his doom effects can actually just be crazy strong. I would say they are oftentimes not as strong as Dionysus, unless you have good setup, but they synergize well into themselves. To where what you usually want to do is you put them on a multi-hit attack. I know it seems weird, but Doom can't be applied multiple times in a row. So hitting them a ton of times, why would you want to do that? Because there's one boon in the game, and that's that when you apply Doom multiple times, it increases the damage. So oftentimes it can be like a not Zeus or a bootleg Zeus or Dionysus. He's not going to be as good as those two in my opinion. So Ares isn't going to be quite as good as these bad boys, but Ares is still fairly good. Demeter is trash. I used to love Demeter. Demeter used to be, hell, even like a week ago, I would have said Demeter's one of my favorites, and she is one of my favorites. I love the slowdown. I love a lot of her synergies mechanics-wise. They're really fun. They aren't that good. So she's a % damage scaler, and slowing foes is good. It's just not that crazy. If you want to slow foes, it's better to go for Dionysus, and he has like a slow effect when his inflict hangover. If you do use Demeter, you wouldn't want to use her on a super slow attack, but you wouldn't want to use her on a super fast attack either. So maybe something like, not aspect of Arthur's sword, but just a normal sword. It still doesn't mind that % damage increase. It would rather have Dionysus or Zeus, but it doesn't mind the % damage increase. And it'll apply chill in a very fast manner. Thing is, reduction of movement speed isn't that crazy the better you get at the game. Early on, it feels crazy. Later on, it is not that crazy. It just really isn't. And so, it's kind of mid. Most of her side boons actually kind of suck, not gonna lie. Her duo boons are usually reliant on her, like, cast. Okay, not usually. I think only one is, but still. Don't go for her cast, by the way. Ares is great because you're probably going for his cast if you start with him. You don't mind running an Ares cast build. Demeter's cast is just less consistent than Ares in the sense that Ares, if it starts to not work out, you've still got a decent cast to rely on. If Demeter's doesn't work out, you just don't use your cast. Demeter's cast sucks on its own. Yeah, I know some people are going to argue, oh, I'm just not using it right. I was the biggest fan of Demeter's cast. I would run Demeter every single run, first thing of the run. I'd pick her cast up every single time. Trust me, I've had a lot of experience with Demeter. The cast is kind of lackluster until you really start building it up with Chilly Glare, whatever the fuck it's called, and mostly Artemis Boon. Sometimes if you're at Styx, you might pick up Aphrodite's, and it's better than nothing in my opinion. But no, you don't really want Demeter's. In fact, I'd say Demeter's is going to go down to C tier. The Acorn's good. I'm willing to put it bottom of A tier. So there's a subsection of relics, and these subsection of relics are going to be, let me pick them out, is you're going to use these guys as defensive tools for your final fight. And they kind of vary on how good they are and which one you like. The Acorn is going to give you 5 free hits in the Hades fight. I used to love this one the most. It's still probably my favorite overall. There's a huge flaw with it though, and what keeps it from being the absolute guaranteed best one is that a lot of attacks that Hades, especially in extreme measures, summons is multi-hit. For example, the butterflies, 3 butterflies can hit you at once. Congrats. 3 hits of your Acorn, gone. Sucks. the Doom Crystal dude. If the Doom Crystal spawns, 3 hits. Well, honestly, Doom Crystal, his laser beams will immediately erase all stacks of this. So while it is really nice for resisting Hades' attacks, since the first phase of Hades has him summoning quite a few enemies that are probably going to waste it, 5 free hits honestly isn't that crazy, because they aren't the hits you want to be saving. The hits you want to be saving and the hits you're probably thinking of are like a massive Hades like sweep attack or a Cerberus stomp. Yeah, Cerberus fucking sucks. So it's good, but just keep in mind that the boss's summons will absolutely tear through them. And you have to weigh 5 hits. How much damage are they really doing? Generally, 5 hits are going to be doing more than 100 damage to you. 5 hits, if they're all from Hades, will probably do easily 300 damage to you. But keep in mind, you might be losing them to the small, insignificant hits that are doing 20 or 10 damage. Oh, and also another thing to keep in mind is it has no effect in the prior rooms. It only has an effect when you get to Hades. I don't really have an issue with sticks, so this is mostly fine. But it's only going to help you in the Hades fight. Broken Spearpoint does is after you take damage, you become impervious to damage for 1.5 seconds, and it refreshes after 7 seconds. Honestly, tied with Acorn. It could go above or it could go below. For now, we'll put it here. The reason I say that, first thing to note, it works in sticks. Well, okay, I should probably explain the mechanics of it first. Like I've already explained, it makes you invincible for 1.5 seconds. But what does that mean exactly? It means it gives you a chance to run away from multi-hit attacks really, really well. It's not as useful for getting hit once because, all right, if Hades hits you once, you're still taking that 30 damage, you're immune to for 1.5 seconds. That doesn't sound like a lot, and I honestly didn't think it was until I played with it a few times. It's honestly pretty dang fire. For example, before you get to Hades, you have those Gorgon heads that shoot you with laser beams. The first 2 damage will hit you, and then you're invincible for 1.5 seconds. 1.5 seconds is a lot longer than you realize. Oftentimes, that's enough to just wail on 1 or maybe even 2, 3 Gorgon heads and just get them out of the fight before they've done more than 2 damage to you. So it saves you a lot of damage in sticks. And you know how you have those really bad rooms with those poison dudes as well? Poison dudes, same thing. You get hit by the initial 2 damage. You have 1.5 seconds where you can kill the satyr. You can walk over to a healing pool, heal yourself up, recoup, do literally anything. And trust me, 1.5 seconds is a lot longer than it feels. And since it happens every 7 seconds and there's no limit, pretty much every time you get hit by a satyr and every time you get hit by a Gorgon head, you have time to refresh, recoup. You are never taking damage from those guys again. That is great. When you're just being swarmed by all those tiny rats, great for then. Step in a poison puddle from the big rats, great for then. Like, it counters every enemy in sticks so well. It's kind of crazy. Like, you ever been in one of those rooms in sticks where it's tight, you're getting hit by everything at once, and you're just baby raging your way through, mashing buttons because you're really fucking angry? Because I have a lot. And this prevents that, because you get hit once, and then you can baby rage for your 2 seconds, and you're honestly fine. Now, in the actual Hades fight, because that's, again, you're probably saying, Sticks isn't so bad. Sticks isn't so bad, but it is still helpful in sticks. Sometimes I still lose a Death Defiance in sticks. It's helpful. Whereas in the Hades fight, it's actually still pretty good. Hades attacks in groups of 2 usually. So his first attack might be a sweep this way, and then he loops back and tries to sweep you again. This can prevent that second attack from hitting you. I would say if you aren't experienced with using Broken Spearpoint and you don't want to be, yeah, fine. Don't run Broken Spearpoint. If you are willing to get experience with Broken Spearpoint and you play a melee class usually, I've used it on the bottom, varying success, still good. Since if you're playing a melee class, if you get hit, you can get 2 seconds of just free damage wailing on him. And so usually when I play with Broken Acorn, or not Broken Acorn, my bad, Acorn, whatever the hell it's called, I'm going to lose it within the first stage, not really block any hits like Cerberus that I want to hit. Whereas the Adamant thing, I'm not going to block too many hits I want to hit like Cerberus because it just doesn't have that functionality. But a lot of times I'll find myself hit by a butterfly, or I'll intentionally run into the 2 damage butterfly to proc my invincibility and fuck Hades up before a bad attack. It takes more finesse. It's going to be harder to run than the Acorn, so I'm going to put it a little lower than the Acorn. But if you can get the hang of it, it destroys sticks for one, and it can be very useful in the Hades fight if you're good at pumping out damage in that 2 seconds. So Skelly's Lucky Tooth is what I believe this one's called, and it just gives you another mini Death Defiance that only restores 100 HP, I want to say. Between B and C tier, probably low B. Low B, high C. I don't care for it too much. 100 HP isn't that crazy. Now, the argument is, when you die, you don't take the overflow damage. Because, like, let's say you have 12 HP, right? And then Hades hits you for 100 HP. Well, you don't actually take 100 damage. You only take the 12, and then you Death Defiance. So it's got some overflow. Doesn't seem that important. It does work in Styx or the Hades fight, whichever it would be most convenient. The thing with it is it's not going to be wasted like the Acorn, nor do you have to kind of skillfully maneuver around its quirks like the Broken Spearhead. Myrmidon is interesting. I put it high B tier. Myrmidon is going to make you take 30% less damage from the front, 10% more damage from the back. Percent damage reduction is kind of crazy. If you're running something like Arthur, plus you have like Athena, plus you have like some Aphrodite going on, you're probably already packing like over 50% damage reduction. 30% makes you almost immortal, and that's very, very good. Honestly, no, I'm going to put it up here with the rest. The issue is what your response to it getting attacked is. Me personally, I'm usually taking damage while I'm trying to dash out of there. I'm not bad enough at the game to where I'm just like brazenly facing the attack. Some might say if you're wearing Myrmidon Bracelet, that's good at the game. Personally, in most cases, I'm like, shit, Hades is attacking me. I'll dash away. My back is now facing Hades, and his big AoE just hit me. And so it's like, how much does it actually help? Because almost always I have my back to the attack I want to avoid, and it's usually I'm whiffing the avoid. So if you are newer to the game, that 30% is better because you will oftentimes not turn around to avoid it. You'll just be taking damage because you're overwhelmed by everything on the screen. Whereas if you're good at the game, you're probably trying to avoid it. You misinputted, you were a bit too late, bit too early, and your back is to the attack because you were fleeing from it. This one's kind of different because you can actually use Spiked Collar early on or later on. I'll put it B tier. I don't think it's great. So what it's going to do is when you equip it, you're going to get 50 max health. Effectively, it's like getting 2 Minotaur Hearts just for 1 keepsake take on a floor. So I feel like it's not a bad take in actually Elysium. If you're really struggling because you only have 100 HP and you haven't gotten many Minotaur Hearts, but your damage is fucking cracked, then you might take it to get 150 HP. 2 Minotaur Hearts really shouldn't be understated. It can really help solve an HP issue if you're having an HP issue. You aren't going to use it on the Hades fight. Well, you could use it on the Hades fight. If you have a lot of Death Defiances, you can substitute it on the Hades fight because 50 more health means 25 more health per Death Defiance. So you are getting the 50 immediate health, and then you're getting 3 per Death Defiance, which is 75. So mathematically, that one's very easy to calculate. 125, better than Skelly. On average, I'd still say it's worse than Skelly for the simple reason that Skelly prevents a lot of the damage. Like if you're at 1 health, it will prevent all of the damage and then refresh you at 100. This one isn't going to do that. You're going to get plenty of times overflown. Oftentimes, it's going to be the worst thing you can choose when you're fighting Hades. Daisy. Sorry, my cat is going crazy. She wants held. Oh boy. Sometimes she meows at the door until I pick her up and hold her. Alright. So continuing on. Try to put Daisy down so she's not meowing into the mic. But if you, for some reason, value health over a god boon, or introducing a god to your pool, then sure. I could see it in a case where you've exhausted like the 2 or 3 gods you really want, you don't care about your 4th god in the pool, and you don't really want to add Athena into your pool or something. You'd rather add no gods to your pool so you can keep hammering those 4 boons, then sure. I could see a case where you want that 50 HP. I don't feel like it's as good as, say, Pom Blossom, but it honestly is closer to Pom Blossom than you might think. Lambent Plume. So this falls into the category of Pierce Butterfly, Lambent Plume. They're ones you want to pick and then you have to stay with for the entire run to get their benefit. the highs of Lambent Plume is that it could give you like 40% dodge chance, which is better than all of these defensive relics combined. What you have to do is you have to clear floors quickly, and if you clear a floor quickly, it will give you 1.2 dodge chance and movement speed. Dodge chance being the important one for most of us. I'm willing to put it tied with Pom Blossom. In fact, I'd say it's better than Pom Blossom if you really commit to it. Pom Blossom, you're going to be using for your entire run for some minor buffs to every boon. You're going to get minor attack buffs. I say minor because, again, you're oftentimes going to be getting a Pom already. And once you get past 3 Poms, what's 5% damage? Sure, 5% total damage, that's not that crazy. 5% damage reduction, that's good, but still not honestly that crazy. I feel like the 40% dodge chance is oftentimes better than the 20% extra damage you're going to get from Pom Blossom. Because dodge chance can be stacked with Hermes' dodge chance. And if you're running with the gauntlets with their dodge chance, you can stack them up. And I've seen people get to like 60 dodge chance very frequently. And that's kind of crazy. I'm not going to lie. 60 dodge chance is enough. You can kind of ignore the game and just smash. It's probably going to be better than Pom Blossom. Though I do not think it's as good as just stacking up the god relics. Yeah, Pierced Butterfly is a similar case as Lambent Plume. What it's going to do is if you clear a room without taking damage, you get 2% damage forever. It is worth noting about Lambent Plume and Pierced Butterfly, they only work if you keep them equipped. You can't just equip them for Asphodel plus Elysium and then not equip them for Hades and expect them to work. You have to keep them equipped. That's kind of the part that sucks. You can't just stack up 20% dodge chance. Otherwise, honestly, I might rank this a little higher for the flexibility. Typically, I think the most you're going to reach on this is from the 40 to 60 ballpark if you're good at the game. If you aren't as good at the game, you're going to get 20 to 30% damage. 20 to 30% damage isn't bad. That's about 1 Chaos Boon worth. 1 common Chaos Boon worth. 60 damage is actually teetering on like really, really good. But it's not good enough to be better than the God Boons. 100%. Because Aphrodite is going to be giving you 120% damage on your attack. It's a little bit more than just that 40% damage you're going to be getting. So this one's vastly dependent on how you like to play the game. It forces you to play a lot slower. It can be really fun to play with, but I think I'm going to rate it below the dodge chance. Even 30% dodge chance, stacking with the other dodge chance effects to like 50%, I think is going to do you much, much better than extra damage. Because there is a lot of ways to get damage. There is not many ways to get dodge chance. And 100% dodge chance is the max. You're invincible at that point. And so I feel like 40% damage for committing your entire run to it is oftentimes less than what you would be getting from a rare boon. For example, the difference between an Aphrodite common boon, rare boon, and epic boon is probably about 10% per rank. And so on average, Aphrodite is going to be holding Aphrodite's trinket is going to be giving you 10% more damage on her boons because you didn't get a common boon. And so oftentimes the opportunity cost of the god boons outweigh what you're going to be wanting to do with Pierced Butterfly. This one is Sisyphus's thing. I kind of forget it's called, Broken Shackle, I want to say. Anything that doesn't have a boon applied to it, so your attack, special, cast, it's going to do 100% more damage. Double damage as long as you have no boon applied to it. Nope, it's going in bottom of C tier. So you kind of just never really want to use this unless you're doing some sort of weird challenge run. The only case you would use this is in the early acts where you don't have a boon and you want to blitz through them. But hear me out. Instead of not having a boon, do yourself a favor, equip Aphrodite or equip Zeus. And what's going to happen is you're going to get one of their boons. And then they'll give you 120% damage. The Shackled boon does nothing to set yourself up. It is just a crutch to rely on early game when your damage is really low. So a lot of people like the Chaos boon. What this one does is it makes you 40% more instead of 20% like the other gods. 40% better Chaos boons, which means 40% chance to be rare or above, which is very good. And you take no damage entering Chaos Gate. I want to put it there. Below Cerberus. So the reason I dislike it is I don't feel like the not taking damage is relevant at all. I will constantly be hitting myself with as many chaos things as I can find, and I will take 80 damage over a run, and it typically doesn't matter in the slightest. 20 damage is not that big of a deal. And honestly, if you're worried about the damage aspect, equip Cerberus, congrats. Now you've got 50 health to take that 20 damage. That's oftentimes not the reason you're going to be equipping this. It's for the 40% better boons. The only thing I have to say about that I dislike chaos is a lot of times, or not a lot of times, but about 30% of the times, I'll run through an area and I won't find chaos at all. And that kind of sucks. When do you want chaos? You usually want chaos in the first two areas. Elysium taking chaos is going to require a good build. So you want him early on. And early on, I feel like the god boons vastly outclass him. Asphodel is much shorter, therefore you have less chances to find a chaos gate as well. So Asphodel isn't really a great place for him. I get like 40% chance to be rare is good. That can change an attack from 30% to 60%, and chaos boons are the best in the game. Like, pretty much borderline best in the game because they stack with other boons, and that stacking is busted. But since it doesn't actually increase your chance to find chaos, usually I think your rerolls, and I think even without rerolls, just 30% to an attack isn't too bad. It's not too bad. Does it need to be 60%? 60% is nice, but I feel like you're going to be getting a lot more out of it by stacking gods up. Now, if you can like buy a chaos gate in your intermission zone and then equip the boon real quick, maybe you're cooking. So next we got what is it? Distant Memory. This shit sucks. Distant Memory makes you deal 30% more damage to enemies who are far away from you. Now keep in mind, my favorite weapon is the bow, and I am saying this is D tier. Worst of the worst, pretty much. So there's a few reasons this is bad. One, let's go over 30% damage. So the place you would want to use this is either Elysium, where you're struggling and you don't have that much damage, or Hades fight, where you want more damage. You don't want to use it early on because you could easily get damage from one of your god boons or whatever. 30% more damage is meh. It's about as good as a Chaos Common boon. You are not going to be feeling it that much. Additionally, that's just saying 30% total. Honestly, if it was you do 30% more damage, just flat outright, it'd be right here. Wouldn't even be S tier. Because 30% damage is not as good as the opportunity of all of these god boons. These god boons are going to be doing much more than 30%. Its main drawback is the distance. On most weapons, you don't actually have the range to do much with the distance. And then even on bow, I find it kind of hard because even bow kind of wants to be melee in some cases, not all cases. Aspect of Rama, yeah, you kind of want to get close and blow a fucking big load up Hades' ass. I promise it's not sexual at all. Promise I'm not projecting anything. But yeah, you're never going to want this. 30% damage, A, isn't that high. B, it's very, very, very specific 30% damage. Not that high. Chthonic Coin Purse is pretty good. Chthonic Coin Purse gives you 150 gold just whenever you equip it. I put this shit honestly above Pom Blossom. I'm not going to lie. I know most people are going to hard disagree with that. 150 gold is only enough to buy one Minotaur Heart, so you might be like, oh, why not Cerberus or whatever. It's honestly just for buying an extra god boon when you think you'll need it, or buying some extra Death Defiances. I find that more useful than the few percents. I don't know. Maybe I'm underrating Pom Blossom a little bit. They can be about tied, but I'll say Chthonic Coin Purse is a tiny bit worse. Just because Pom Blossom, if you start with Pom Blossom, you're going to be doing fine. You're going to be doing great even. Pom Blossom really does help snowball the beginning. Chthonic Coin Purse doesn't help the beginning that much. Usually Chthonic Coin Purse means you get one more boon. That's usually what it means. Chthonic Coin Purse can be very good with the mirror that gives you like interest effectively on your money, but not more so enough that I think it's worth giving up the god boons. So yeah, Chthonic Coin Purse is actually a good bit below Pom Blossom. It's pretty simple. The money's going to get you one extra boon that you probably couldn't have afforded otherwise. It's handy. That's about all I can say. I mean, I'd rather have one free boon than pretty much anything below it. Harpy Feather Duster, congrats. We found something that is worse than Distant Memory. Harpy Feather Duster, whenever you destroy those pots and shit, it's going to have a 6% chance to contain a healing item that, if I remember correctly, heals 8 HP. So yeah, Harpy Feather Duster sucks. 6% chance is low. 8 health is not enough. It's completely irrelevant. It will never be enough healing. 8 HP, even if you held this thing across every single run, like Tartarus, Asphodel, Elysium, you held that thing all the way to the end, it total would probably net you like 100 HP being generous. This thing sucks. Nobody has time to break pots. Nobody wants to sit there breaking pots, scrounging for 8 HP. Harpy Feather Duster is the worst trinket in the game. Next thing is Skull Earring. What this one's going to do is whenever you are low, you're going to do 40% more damage. So whenever you have 35% health or less, you do 40% more damage. 40% is a lot more than Distant Memory, and you can apply it a lot more than Distant Memory. It goes in the bottom of C tier. It's not like hot garbage like these. If you equipped these two, I'd look at you and I'd tell you, like, you don't know what you're doing. These suck. Even if you play bow or railgun, trust me, I main bow, and it still sucks. And being low has some merit. There's a lot of times where I am very low in the Hades fight, and I will continue to be low. I don't think we're like going above the Chaos Boon. 100% we aren't going above the Chaos Boon. I'm probably going to put it at top of C tier. It's 40% really isn't negligible. I don't think 40% is as much as people crack it up to be. Next one is Death Sigil. Death Sigil's weird. So what it's going to do is it's going to replace your call. If you have a call, you cannot choose this boon. I mean, you can't choose this keepsake. So your gauge will start 30% full, and it'll make you invisible, which makes you invincible, and you can't take damage. This only works for about probably 2 seconds, like maybe the same amount of time, probably less than Athena's call. I would say it is worse than Athena's call. Now at full charge, you're going to be getting a bit more invincibility out of it. You're going to get like, what, 6 seconds? Nah, not 6. Probably 4 seconds of invincibility out of it. Additionally, if you attack, it breaks your invincibility unless it's a full charge. And when you break your invincibility, you get a 100% damage boost for like 1.5 seconds. The damage boost is good. Can't overstate the damage boost is good. Put it right here. Right, the tippy top of C tier. The reason I'm going to put it at the top of C tier, the 100% damage boost honestly isn't so bad. If you've got a big attack, you're honestly probably going to be using that 100% more damage boost than you are going to be getting that 40% damage boost from Megara's Skull Earring. So it's good there. Oh, and the invincibility, if you for some reason don't have a call that has invincibility during like the Hades fight. So if you're fighting Hades and you don't have invincibility, invincibility is very helpful for Cerberus and a few other things. Very, very useful. Then yeah, that's actually not such a bad idea. It's too niche. It requires you to not have a call when you get to Hades, and then it requires you to want the invincibility more than you would want something like any of the other defensive relics you could put on. So no, you just aren't going to use it. So this one I kind of suck at using. This next one is the Charon one. I kind of forget what it's called. Bone Hourglass, that's what it's called. Well of Charon effects are increased by 8 encounters, which is fucking huge. What this means is you can grab like you heal 8% health at the end of each fight. That will now last for 10 fights. That is crazy. That's like 80% health restored. Your cast does extra damage, your whatever does extra damage. You can actually stack this up very, very well. Top of B tier, probably. Yeah. Maybe low A tier. Yeah, low A tier is fair. You can slot it in the Hades fight. Well, before the Hades fight, find a bunch of Wells of Charons, and you can honestly get really crazy damage. If you're looking for like just damage for the Hades fight, like you sheerly just want a flat damage increase instead of anything defensive, Well of Charon's going to be for you. Now it's a bit luck based, so I'm hesitant to put it above these, but I think on average, the good it will, it's only for a cast build though. Put it right there. Slap it right there. Yep. Well of Charon, very good, kind of luck dependent, so I can't put it above these two other defensive Hades relics. Final one is Black Shawl. This is Nyx's one. What it is going to do is make you do 20% damage when you strike undamaged foes and when you strike foes from behind. And they do stack together. So you can get potentially massive damage if they're undamaged and you strike behind. I'm going to sink it above Megara, below Hades' Sigil. In the Hades fight, a lot of times you are going to be wanting to do backstab damage already. The undamaged is irrelevant. Sure, one attack gets 20% damage. That does not matter at all. Maybe 2 attacks. The backstab damage is what does matter. And 20% isn't that crazy. I'll say this, 20% is actually kind of nothing. You aren't really going to be feeling it, but a lot of your attacks are backstab anyways, so the fact that it has almost 100% uptime, if you're playing kind of well, is pretty huge. I think this is pretty good, so I'm going to call it there. If you'd like to see more of this kind of thing, let me know. I'd be down to ranking like the boons or just the gods in general. Hell, I'd be down to rank the weapons, weapon upgrades, all of those things. Would be very cool. Plus, I might not stop at just Hades. Hades is my fixation right now, but Rampant Steel ranking all the relics sounds uber fun, and I'm probably going to play some Rampant Steel tomorrow. I'll see you guys later. Have a wonderful night.